Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.
Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And I have somebody that has a connection to the city that is like no other. I'm talking about somebody that brings to the city something that really should have been in the city for forever. Because when we think about Detroit, we think about black folk. When we think about black folk, we think about culture. And the number one thing that we think of when we think of culture is definitely hair. Nefertiti, how are you today?
I am well. How are you?
Okay. Everything is well. Everything is well. You looking fly in your naturalness, and you got your I don't even know what necklace,
Ivory.
real ivory, and you got on like something I don't even know what that is, like a crochet pattern, just always in style.
Mm-hmm. A sweater.
Okay. But it ain't like no regular. You know, when I think sweater, you know what I'm saying? I'm thinking like Marshalls.
I'm just playing with you.
Marshalls or
Marshalls.
exactly, or let's see, Macy's. I don't know if they carrying said that's probably like an original that's hand stitched.
So I'm gonna give a plug out to where I got this from, which was a Black-owned, wonderful boutique that's been around for 25 years in Eastern Market. Savvy Chic.
Okay, see, that's what I'm saying, an original. And you're a Detroit original as well. So that definitely just drives the classic Detroit is Different question of your roots to Detroit. Are you first generation, second generation? How did your peoples end up on this shore?
That is a great question because I'm actually from Chicago.
Oh,
How
man.
I got to Detroit, oh God, I don't know, over 30 years ago for sure. So I got to Detroit in the late 70s. Right. And I got to Detroit because I was a member of a church called the Shrine of the Black Madonna. I joined that church in Chicago, at the age of 15. And then at the age of 19, I decided to move to Detroit because I was participating in the election of Mayor Coleman Young.
Wow. So now that definitely leads to, Chicago's like a cousin city of Detroit.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? We look
For
at
sure.
Chicago like sometimes we'll say y'all 2 steps back, and then Chicago will say, no, y'all 2 steps back. We've been having this cousin rivalry for a while.
Yes.
Whereabouts in Chicago?
I was actually raised in the projects of Cabrini Green.
Wow. For real?
Yeah.
So, okay, everybody was like, did you know JJ for real?
JJ came after me. So I was raised in the projects of Cabrini Green, and in the middle of the MLK riots. Not in the middle, right at the tail end, our family moved to the south side of Chicago. I remember during the riots being told not to stand up in the windows because they were sniping the police and the snipers from on top of the roof of our projects. And so I would have to crawl on the floor to, and then roll into the bed. And I remember being hunched in the back seat of our car as we were moving out because we were, wanted to be careful about not getting shot. I also remember flyers from the Black Panther Party being scattered all over the ground of the projects. And I used to when I turned 17, I went back to the projects to participate in the breakfast program that the Black Panther Party was having there. Yeah.
Okay, so that naturally leads to the next big question that most people gonna ask when you think of Chicago Panthers at that time. Fred Hampton.
That's okay. Good question. Again, my parents were activists. Let's just start right there. My mother used to walk with King. My mother also used to work at Johnson Publishing Company in the 60s. My father was a follower of Elijah Muhammad at one time.
Wow.
Yeah, he called himself Bernard X.
Mm.
And so, I've lost my track. What was that question?
So I was saying Fred Hampton, but
Okay,
you drop it. Wait, let me give some context.
Yeah,
'Cause
on the
I
context.
usually
Right,
do
that's
this
the
for
context.
people. So
So that's the
Johnson
context.
Johnson
Johnson
Publishings for
Ebony
people that don't
Magazine.
know, Ebony, Jet, and Essence, and it
Right.
was one of the first known publishers for Black, what I would say like Black culture, Black experience,
Mhm.
Black essence of like what beauty would be, what Black expression would be. It was like putting on paper and expressing something. So the Johnson family did that, and that was based in Chicago. You also touched on definitely when we think of Elijah Muhammad, and it's
Mhm.
also a relationship between the Nation of Islam start in Detroit and then ending up in Chicago.
Yep.
Lord knows, I do not want anybody from the nation to be like, well, brother, da, 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 da. But it's a lot of that relationship too, and why Chicago was chosen, and just so much of the activism at that time, which leads to you saying your mother and this connection with Fred Hampton.
Yeah, so my mother took me to the last rally that Fred Hampton had in Chicago.
Wow.
And I remember just looking out because I was very young. And I remember just looking up and seeing all these people in African garb and, signs and this and that. And I remember maybe a week or two later, if I can recall, I was so young, him being murdered.
So the assassination of Fred Hampton, as we know from which was conspired, the FBI, the Chicago Police Department. I would also say what the CIA, like it was, is something more widely, I guess, accepted in the American lexicon today. But from what I hear on the pulse of the ground from a lot of people in Chicago, the people knew immediately what was up, how it happened, why it happened.
Absolutely.
And that tenseness was carried in that community. And some of also what I know is shout out my great uncle, Uncle Edgar, that was a principal at Dunbar for a long
Oh,
time.
yeah. My mother graduated from Dunbar.
Yep. So there we go. It's a school for Chicago people. They like, what you know about Dunbar? I know a little bit about Dunbar, but this all in that same neighborhood of like even seeing what organizing and activism could be, and Fred Hampton being someone that saw it at very such a young age, saw the opportunities of aligning different people in interests, even with what would be labeled as quote unquote gang members, to activism, to organizing, to like that strength. And hence Chicago had like such a strong note of that. Also, another one of our favorite Detroit sons that we've adopted, the great bad boy Isaiah Thomas, being one of those people kind of connected in that same struggle as well to some of this work. And your mother and your father being grounded, which grounded you into this activism at a young age. What was your interpretation of this? Did this just seem, did you recognize what was going on, or were you just a child and it was like, no, this is just what we do as a family?
So you gotta understand that was the era where it was normalized. That was just the sign. That was just the times. Those are the times. Activism was just a way of life then, right? In Chicago, I don't quite know what was going on in Detroit, but in Chicago, it was just a way of life. We're talking about a time. We're talking about ultra sheen, soft sheen, Wantu Wazuri. We're talking about a time where 90.9% of African Americans were seeking their Africanness. They were seeking to learn and accept who we are as a people. That was also a time where it was all this this conversation about how you identify as an African American. It was when we were moving from the identification of being colored to embracing African or African American or Black. It was a big conversation about that during that time. So it was just that was just the environment that I was raised in, and it was the environment that molded me and molded my frame of thinking. It was also a time where there were a lot of things going on. There was the the feminism movement going on at that time. It was the war that was going on. It was just a pivotal time in our history.
And this is why I ask, because when you're young,
hmm
you only know what the depth of understanding of an adolescence is what it is. And then as you grow older, you can sometimes reflect like, that was interesting. That was a era that happened that molded even who I am, and clearly it molded who you are, to the point where you're like, hey, I'm 19, and for all people that are below 19, 19 is not that old. So it's a bold move to relocate at 19. What was that like, and how did your family say, okay, you gonna go 94 east of Detroit, or what I'm telling people say Detroit, but you going 94 east of Detroit. What was that like? How was that embraced? How was that looked at?
So you're very right. During that time, 19, you were considered grown, basically, right? I mean, I was still young, right? But you were considered grown enough to do your thing. My family was concerned, okay, because they were concerned. They knew a little bit about the Shrine of Black Madonna, but they didn't know enough of it that would make me they didn't understand the pull, something that would be so strong that would pull me away from the city and the state and the home that I was raised in. So were they concerned? Yeah, but then they trusted my decision, and they would come and visit me, and they learned enough about that organization where they joined themselves.
Wow. Okay. So what was it like coming here, and less on the shrine, but just what did you experience in Detroit when you got here? What were the differences from Chicago? What do you remember? Like, Detroit is different.
Detroit is different. And so one of the things now people are not going to like this, but so me coming from Chicago, which is extremely metropolitan and extremely diverse, who had a transportation infrastructure that was so functional, the first thing that struck me about Detroit was the bus system. I couldn't figure out, well, why aren't the buses coming every 5 minutes?
Okay, well, Nefertiti, let me be honest with you. That has been something that has struck many Detroiters for forever. Hence the Motor City. It's like, damn, I think I need a car here.
So that hence the point, right?
Yeah.
Then I was told, well, yeah, because you got to have a car. In Detroit, and then in Chicago, you didn't have to have a car.
No.
Let me tell you something. I didn't even know how to drive when I came to Detroit. I didn't have to.
Yep.
I just didn't have to. But when I came here, I said, well, you got to learn how to drive. So that was one of the things that struck me was the infrastructure, meaning the transportation system. The other thing that struck me was this very clear and distinct divide between cultures here.
Break that down.
All the black people are in this area, and all the white people are in this area, and where's the in between? So I was raised in an environment where a lot of my Latino folk, lived around me. I saw a lot of Filipino, Asian community here, and you know what I mean? Everybody mixed together. Not to say that there wasn't a distinct African American community and there wasn't a distinct white community and distinct Italian community and other communities. I'm just saying that in Chicago, my experience was at some point people were functioning together, either on their jobs or on the bus. See, this is where the transportation system comes in, and the transit systems and the schools. The foods. There was just a lot more exposure to other cultures there.
Yeah.
But when I came here, it was black or white, and that was all I experienced, and I couldn't understand it.
So, classic joke I always say, like the Metro in Chicago, every time I see the train and the overpass, I'll be like, that's where Cochise died, meaning the Cooley High movie. You watch that. But also, what's also unique about this is because my whole lifetime, Chicago has been like a step in segregation. It's almost been a step above Detroit. So probably within the time of you, like Chicago went through a different metamorphosis, I'm assuming, just possibly through the Ottoman system or the Daly family or who knows what in the history of Chicago, because now it's almost start to like, almost it's like, hey, if you black, you can't buy a
Right.
house on that block,
Seriously.
you know?
That's the truth too.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the things that was one of the stark differences that I notated in my mind about, when I got here, was like, where are all the cultures at?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody still had their own space, right? But at some point in my experience, people still were able to mingle and things.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it has a lot to do also with the industry, because in Detroit, the industry, it was an automotive industry.
Hmm.
Okay. In Chicago, there was more diversity in the areas of work that Black people and others participated in. Now, I will say this: one of the things that I also noticed about Detroit was, I was like, Black people have houses here. I was struck by that. I was like, everybody has a house. Oh my God. Everybody has some land. People have their own, Black people have communities here.
Yeah.
That blew me away.
Yeah, and that's something that is brought up often when we have some of these interviews. I remember the classic Dan Aldridge interview. It's like, these Black people got houses and pianos in the living room.
Exactly.
So that was just something, him being from New York and a lot of other cities where a lot of times Black people were segmented to housing projects. And not because, like, it's an idea that people lived in the projects because you don't have money and it's destitute and all. It's like, no, it's the... when people talk about redlining, it's more than just redlining.
Yep.
It's to the point of going back to our former president, Donald Trump, and his father's whole concept of the design of Queens as a suburb was like, we specifically don't want Black people to live in any of these apartments. And the only place where you, being Black, could even submit an application to live was the projects. So this was ever present in many places. So it'd be like you be in the projects and then like 2 floors up, it's like, wow, man, they just was on tour with you know what I'm saying? They just traveled the world with I don't know, with Sammy Davis Jr.
It's the truth.
And they in the projects. And then the guy down the hall is a pharmacist. And they in the projects.
Exactly.
And the street people still in the projects too. But it's like, this is the only place as a Black person you can live. Because you don't even have the option to get a house.
Right. So now you're talking about the diversity of income, okay, and being exposed to professional African American folk that is living right next door to you.
Yes.
In the projects.
Yeah. So I do want to give that framework, because Detroiters, and then sometimes even like nowadays, you think the projects is just some wild place that, Nas raps about on Illmatic, where it's like, it's some wild stuff that happens in the projects, but at one point in time, it was forced to be more of a community, because that's where, in a lot of other cities, the only place Black people could find housing. Even going back to, I want to say it was commemorated recently, the first project here, when we think about the Sojourner Truth Homes and what that represented as a place and space for Black people to live, which drives us to another question. What neighborhood, what place? I'm guessing, being in the Shrine, you stayed with the Shrine, and not that far. Where did you live when you first came here?
In the training center on Seward.
Wow, okay. So what was that experience like?
It was beautiful.
Okay. Explain
It was
some.
absolutely beautiful. And the reason why it was beautiful is because you get I had the opportunity to be part of and to understand what communalism actually looks like in a functioning way. Okay, it was just beautiful. It was shared. It was a shared experience. To me, it was a representation of how human beings are designed to live by nature.
Expand on that.
Meaning not individualist, not sitting up in your house by yourself, not dealing with your problems, your issues, or your joys alone. Sharing those things with other individuals.
Hmm. And
Sharing resources, just sharing, just family, just it's a family.
so being 19, because like I say, that's still a very young age to embrace community like that. And really that means that now you're part of a family
Hmm.
and a family welcomes you in. Um, but how how do you think that has an impact on you even to this day?
The impact it is that it's always had on me is that I have always sought to create community, family,
Mm,
um, even in every situation I walk into, even in my business, right?
mhm,
Some of it is not so healthy, but
mhm,
I've always sought to be in community. I'll put it that way
mhm,
with individuals and not be so cut and dry and
mhm,
and have a corporate mind about things, particularly when you're dealing with African American culture. With us, we by nature are communal people.
mhm,
We are, and so there's a lot of beauty in that,
mm,
in the function and the dysfunction of it all.
hmm. So now let's get into the natural hair movement.
Hmm.
Textures by Nefertiti is the like a flagship when it comes to natural hair. Definitely in Detroit, but I'm gonna go as far as to say probably the region, probably the state. Like what exists. You getting into natural hair. What was the thing that sparked you to say, I want to connect to this. I want to learn this. I want to connect to it. Or was it just always one of those things that you like? Were you that person that was like, braiding everybody's hair as a kid? Like, what was that connection in relationship?
Not at all. I didn't
Okay.
even know how to braid, okay, to be
Okay.
perfectly honest with you. One of the reasons why I started the salon was where it's a number of reasons. But one was it was a mission. It was mission driven for me.
Hmm.
And the mission for me was to be part of a movement that could influence African American women to the embracing their natural texture of hair, and also I'm trying to find the right words for this, to to shift Black women's perception of beauty.
I like it. So when do you start? And I know obviously all businesses always, start here. But
Hmm.
when does it go from the idea to you saying it aloud to, you know, getting a client, getting a space, like
Yeah.
so many things. Let's drive back down that memory lane.
All right. So I always like to um, give credit to the people that have paved the way
Hmm.
and that have come before me that
Hmm.
are still around.
Hmm.
And two of those people for sure are Sheila Everett
Hmm.
and Barbara Ari Shawn.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay. And these people were the people that inspired me to to embrace this mission,
Hmm.
because for me it didn't even start off as a business.
Hmm.
I wasn't even thinking about a business.
Hmm.
I was just thinking about literally being part of the movement that changed the perception of beauty for African American women. And I
Hmm.
understood the ramifications of embrace, and the politics even of embracing the natural texture of our hair. And I knew that once we began to look at that, it would open the door to conversations about colorism,
Hmm.
conversations about acceptance, conversations about the shape of your nose, conversations about your African features. I knew it would do that, right?
Hmm.
So as opposed to it started off as a business, it started off for me as a way to be part of this movement and a movement of healing for African American women.
Okay. So what year, when does the mission become a business?
hmm
When does that business get a client?
Got it. So, what year? That was in the mid 90s. I would say 93.
Okay.
93 is when I had my first client.
Okay.
My first client, and the salon that I'd started off in very briefly, which was Barbara Arishan, was closed down. I think there was a fire in the salon or space or something like that, and I just had one client at that time, and I saw her in the home I was living in,
Mm.
and I would just continue to see her. And then I moved out of that home and moved to another space, and the clientele began to climb.
Mhm.
And then I moved from that space to to another space
Mm.
to a flat over on Blaine, and I was still working, and I got tired of working a corporate job,
Mhm.
and I said to myself, you know what? If this is something that I am supposed to be doing, then I need validation. I need some kind of sign that I'm supposed to be doing this. And so it became so stressful on this job that I just went into my office,
Mhm.
and I packed my box,
Mhm.
walked out of that office door, closed the door, went back to my flat, and that week the clientele tripled.
Wow. That's like a
Literally just like that.
wow. That's like like one of those movie moments or something.
Yeah.
Like the climactic.
Yeah.
I can't take it no more. I'm gonna go and it's gonna find its way. And you
Yeah.
just walking by faith, and then the next thing you know,
Yep.
bam! It's like the divine spirit
Just like
falls
that.
right in your lap.
And divine spirit is exactly what it was, because I created a very strong intention.
Hmm.
A very strong intention, and I created a space in my home, a very safe space, to do the work that I was doing. And the work that I was doing was more spiritual than it was hair. I always say hair was just a medium to open up the conversation of healing for individuals.
That's
That's
deep.
exactly what I created in that space.
And then also let's venture back to 93 a
Mhm.
little bit in framing the context of what's happening in 1993. So one of my other big hobbies is I study media, but black media I'm big in. So I have a huge subscription. Like I buy old Black Enterprises, Ebony's Essence, but especially like through Essence and Black Enterprise. Like if I a lot of the issues when I look at like 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, there's a movement of like headlines saying like Black women climbing the corporate ladder, reaching for success, things like that. Like if you go
Yes.
like mid 80s, it's a lot
Right.
of things more so like Black folks need to climb the business ladder and be in the C-suite offices, which is more of a discussion. When they say Black people, they really mean Black men, you know. So that's like the 80s discussion.
Right.
Around the early 90s, we're getting the when we think of like the great Carolyn Cheeks Kilpatrick, you're getting like Oprah's entering the world, Barbara Lee. We're seeing stories of Black women in power positions, engaging and interacting. But the one thing happening with a lot of these Black women is definitely not just hair, how they dress, them being relaxed, but when it comes to hair, for show processed.
Absolutely.
You need to have that perm.
Yep.
If you relax, that relax white people out.
Yeah.
And even in the like in some of those old articles, I'm reading the stuff, and you could even say like, hey, you got to make sure that your hair is done, ready, pressed, laid to the side, and all of this. So this is happening in media terms.
Yeah.
around then. So it's unique. And even when we look to the arcs of beauty of what would be in television. So like whether we're watching the Cosby Show, and you know we love Claire Huxtable. We got a whole podcast for Claire Huxtable, Felicia Rashad. We're looking at, as I say, like Oprah. We're looking at Aunt Viv and the Fresh Prince, and very few natural hair figures seen in it. And then the characters and the arcs of the story usually with a woman with more natural or curly hair. They're like more earthy, less serious, less business, going against the
Right.
grain of the arc of the story being told about this is the trajectory of success. That's a trajectory of if you just want to, like, I guess, be a hippie.
Exactly.
That's what's happening in this snapshot of time, like 93, 94, 95, 96.
You're so on it. When did School Days come out?
And that's a classic one. I want to say School Days is 87.
Okay. Was School Days in 87? Was it that long?
But School Days is another one
No.
of those. What about hair? What about hair? The whole back and
Colorism.
forth. Yes.
The sororities.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Status
Hmm.
based on your hair.
Yes. And what that meant. And you are embracing this. So what was your clientele like? Who were the women that were like, nah, I want something natural. I want to represent the beauty of my culture, of my people, of who I am. What were your clients like? And when I say that, I'm not necessarily saying like, oh, it was Keisha Smith, more so just like their backgrounds. What do you think led them to connect to what you were offering?
I had a lot of professional women, that were really just tired of over processing their hair.
Mm.
And you're right. And it was really at the apex of these different conversations about what is professional.
Mm.
And they wanted to be professional, but they also want to be they want to figure out how can I be professional, sporting my natural hair. And so I gave them, I taught them a way in which to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So the kind of women that were coming to me were professional women.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I was a hairstylist, yes, but I was an undegreed counselor.
Mm.
I was a non-degreed therapist.
And what were the discussions usually had, especially when we think of in the home? So that's a very intimate connection.
very
You're
much.
sharing your life
Yeah.
with your client.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't like, okay, you know, I'm gonna clock in, we gonna go to this space that we
Yeah.
both is, you know, it's sterile and other people around. It's like, nah, you coming into my
Mhm.
home, I'm sharing my family with you, I'm sharing my life with you.
Yeah.
Hence, this opens up different things. So what were some of the discussions where that counseling would be pouring into? And then where did the courage for you to have your full cup to share with others?
Right, and that's a really good question because see, while I was sharing space with others, I was also very cognizant of doing my own healing work, and I was knee deep and committed to doing my own introspective work, and as I will continue to do for myself. But the conversations got really, really deep because I had individuals, because I created such a safe space and a safe space for trust for them. People would share very intimate parts of their lives with me. And I participated in listening, in the art of listening and validating their stories with zero judgment.
That's deep.
And I would step in conversation when I felt like it was needed. But for the most part, I allowed people to just speak what was on their heart, in the pain, in the glory, in everything. So there were very intimate conversations, very spiritual conversations, but a lot of the conversations began with acceptance.
Mhm.
Women wanting to be accepted by their mates in their natural glory, wanting to be accepted by their families, wanting to be accepted by their church families.
Hmm.
And I would always um, end the conversation with the acceptance of of self
That's deep.
being the most prominent, the most dominant thing is acceptance and love of self.
Hmm.
This is also the era, like you said, of Oprah Winfrey. And she really led a lot of these introspective conversations and different ways of looking at self, and she introduced all of that in her platform. And so that really helped because that was the climate. It 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 helped to validate some of the thinking, some of the things that we would talk about, the tenor of the conversation.
That's deep. And you touched on a lot of things there, which naturally leads to I'm gonna zig over to like an artistic cultural question, and then we're gonna get back to that. What were the styles that they were seeking? What was the? I mean, I've been in the salon as the
Yeah.
son of my mama. Rest in peace, Jan Frazier. Love my mama.
Mhm.
And, you sit there and I see women, and then they pull out a lookbook like, I want this. Um, they had that in the barber shop, but you rarely would be like, "Hey, I want that." You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Men and our machismo and stuff.
Right.
We're different. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But I remember I would be in the shop and women would be like, "I want my hair like this on this side and that on that side." It'd be like 7 different looks. What were their frame of reference artistically for what they were looking for? And then how did you, how did you learn your chops to be like, all right, hold on.
Right.
Hold on, let me let me
Mhm.
see. So you want a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
At the time, all I offered was lot cultivation,
Hmm.
and comb twist. That's all I did.
Okay.
That's all I offered.
So I know people were pressing because I just know my people.
Oh
People.
yeah. Oh yeah. And because that's all I offered, then now you really getting into now you can get into some real conversation about how do you feel about yourself? What do you think about your image of yourself?
Hmm.
Because you're talking to somebody that's going from never seeing the natural texture of their hair
Mm.
and being conditioned to think that kinky and nappy is that there's a negative connotation to it,
Hmm.
to switching all the way over to the extremity of you're going to see every single kink. It's not going to be perfect. We can have a conversation about that. You can't be
Mm.
fanatical about it. It was a very interesting time.
And that's unique too because also when I think that early 90s it is, especially if you're like 20 something, you like, well, you should have known that. No, this was not prevalent information. The internet was
Right.
not prevalent.
Oh,
It's already
no.
known. If you want to start a lock journey now, the like a concept like the big chop in 1993 would have been like,
Oh yeah.
you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
radical.
Radical.
So like just knowing the arc of what that and even locking and the time it takes, especially when
Radical.
we think of where, like we say, like a perm or an extension or a
Yeah.
wig or whatever that would be. So to know that, okay, you're gonna be patient because in reality, if you want locks, if you know anybody that started locks, a couple things you need to know. And I'm not even a loctician, I'm just speaking from the My Natural Hair shows that I've been sitting in as the producer.
Hmm.
First off, you're really getting into the texture of your hair. It's not like, oh, well, it's going to take like 3 months. How much did your hair grow anyway? And possibly, depending upon how many chemicals you've been putting in your hair, it's no telling you even know yet, like what you said.
That
So you
part.
thinking to yourself, like, oh, my sister, her locks grew in 3 months.
Hmm.
That was your sister.
Yeah.
It may take you 9 months.
Right. Right. So back then, when I started this, it was an actual journey.
Mm.
And it wasn't a journey of, well, at least when I started doing this of offering this service, it wasn't an exterior journey. It was a journey of the interior.
Hmm.
That was the journey. It wasn't a journey of how long is my hair going to be. It wasn't a journey of how fast is my hair going to lock up. It wasn't a journey of I want my hair to look like this. No, it was the beginning of a journey that inspired individuals to question their own internal world.
Wow. And which leads me back to another one of those questions. In the sense of we talked about the relationships, as we know, that carries. Especially then, this whole concept of good hair. And men, it does. Like where a woman's hair, mane, like it plays a role in how we see in confidence and how men will connect. And I can only imagine like in the mid 90s and all the arcs and the ideas of what the beauty standard is and what we're growing up to of where things go. And I mean, even like rest in peace. I want to say she just passed, but what's her name? Suzanne Summers. Like I remember, I'm a kid. So, you see white, blonde haired woman walks in the room on Three's Company and it's like crowd goes crazy. It's like it's incepting the idea that that's attractive.
Right.
Then the brunette, still a white woman, walks in. It's no whistles or anything for the other lady. Yeah. It's just like, oh, okay, she's whatever looking. You know what I'm saying? Like, and this whole arc exists in time, incepted, and I'm just giving them one media standard, but it's even more prevalent throughout that time. Right. So if this is incepted at me and I'm younger, I can only imagine what's incepted in a man that's probably like 15, 20 years my senior. Yeah. How were men responding, or what was dating? How was that arc just in that world? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a good question too, because at that time Black women that made the decision to embrace their natural selves and starting with their hair was a political statement. It was a political, spiritual statement. And when you get to that point, you really don't care about, who's thinking what. I mean, now, are you in conflict with it a little bit? Are you concerned about it? Those are the conversations we would have.
That you would have, yes.
Those are the and I can tell you there were many women that I turned away. And I said, you know what? I don't think that you're ready for this process right now. But I want you to go home, do some thinking, do some soul searching, look at some other photos, pictures, wherever you can find them. And then when you feel like, talk to your mate, talk to your husband. And when you feel you are at a point where you really want to embrace this, I'm here for you.
So now let's get into the other side, because you drove me right into the business question where you said you turning people away.
Yeah.
The business side. So you go from, I didn't even ask what job, but you go from 19 in Chicago to the Shrine, working there in community, working in Detroit, and this is definitely blue collar, Chicago blue collar.
Yeah.
Now you go into entrepreneurship. Who did you have somebody in your family that was an entrepreneur? Who taught you the arc of entrepreneurship, the accounting, just the process of knowing clients and just knowing the advice I always give anybody that wants to be an entrepreneur? Keep a low overhead. But where did you learn that entrepreneurship journey, just in the business of it? And then you're offering something to the market, which is tough. You're offering a new industry. And when I say new industry, there were people there, but for lack of a better term, let's say a new industry, meaning like resourcing what you need. It's not like you can just, you know what I'm saying? If we're running a hot dog stand, we can just drive to any grocery store, just get some hot dogs, get some mustard and all that stuff. So resourcing what you need. Having an idea to explain what your product is, let alone now it's like you have to sell your product. Classic moment as we talk about Hip Hop 50. Rhyme and Reason, Heavy D's, like in the 80s, he had to sell the fact that not only he had to sell the fact that he was a good rapper, but he had to sell the fact that rap was something to pay for. You had to sell the fact that natural hair is a worth, an industry and a something to buy, a business, and I'm good at it. You know what I'm saying? So that's like a double sell in the world of marketing and client acquisitions. That's tough. So where were you at in learning this whole arc of business ownership and entrepreneurship?
That came with time because I knew absolutely nothing. But what I do, what I can say, that's trial and error, flat out. But I'll tell you, the seed that was planted in me was at the age of 15. My father was also a jazz musician. He played piano and he played alto and tenor sax.
Okay.
And he always wanted to open up his own jazz club, but he wasn't able to because he had to take care of a family, which was us. But he was also very frustrated about it. He was a frustrated musician, very much so. And I remember him calling me. He had his own little man cave, right, where he had all his albums and everything. His stereo system. We had a piano in our home, and he had his saxophone and all that. And I remember him calling me into his space and saying, "Listen, don't ever work somewhere you don't want to be."
Interesting.
He said, "Never work somewhere where you're unhappy." And that I never, ever forgot it. I never forgot it. And then I also watched my grandfather open up. He used to work in the steel mill, but after he retired, he opened up his own newspaper stand in Chicago, and he could neither read or write.
That's deep. I like that. Boy, oh boy.
He knew how to make some money.
I like that. I like that.
He did that until he passed away.
I like that.
So those are the seeds. Those are some of the things that kind of planted that seed of working for yourself.
It's possible. And I know when people say, like, why do you say that's interesting? Because I don't even know the age of your father per se, but it to be of that era, to grow up in that space, that's just not usually the ideology of men in that era, in that age. Yeah. That was the era of, if you a man, you got to have a job and you're going to work. The whole concept of liking what you do is a very modern,
yes.
a very modern millennial concept.
Very true.
So that's why I say very interesting for those wondering. And then as far as the grandfather story, oh man, I boy, those are the types of interviews that I know would be so
right.
So within that, just learning, how did you go about pricing it? How did you know what was fair? Because oftentimes when people start businesses, you start from the lens of a customer,
right,
and not an owner.
Right. Oh, I have to go back to figure out, how did I figure out my pricing? I think I came up with the pricing based on what Baba Ari was charging in his salon at the time. I think that was my format.
So you had a frame of reference.
That was my frame of reference. Yeah.
Okay. And what about like resourcing and the supplies and things like that?
Well, so the beauty supply stores were just as abundant then as they are now. And so I would just go and get my supplies and have them in the space that I created in my home. I had a room in my home where I conducted business.
Okay, but you didn't use what about like all the like the Shea Moistures and all
None
of
of that. No, it's very simple.
Okay, so
Very,
it was
very
just more of so it wasn't like in from doing my natural hair show. It's so many natural hair products nowadays. It's like, you know what I'm saying, as far as like dry conditioners and different arcs of where you're at in your lock journey. This dry conditioner versus that dry conditioner, and
it's way more complicated now than it needs to be. But that's for money. So at that time, I think I created my own hair oil. Yeah. It was so simple because it actually is very simple. So,
and did you even think about it as you were doing that? And this is the other beauty of Black artistry and entrepreneur. Like, we're not thinking always to monetize. Like, did you even process it? Like, one second, I'm making my own product itself that I'm going to use? Or you just looked at it like, this is what I got to do. You know what I'm saying?
It was this is what I have to do.
It's kind of like that great place that makes a great barbecue sauce, and you like, damn, this sauce is amazing. And then it's like, hey, do you got this in a bottle? Like, I never even thought about
Right.
bottling it up. I just know that that's the sauce.
Well, necessity is the mother of invention.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so it was necessary that I do it, and so that's what I did.
Okay. Okay. And then even the process for that, like timing and that you spent and
I didn't think about any of that. I just did it. I used what I had, which is very simple: hair oil and a little bit of gel, and that was it.
okay. Okay. Now, now that's that snapshot in time.
Yes.
We fast forward some years. And now natural hair is taking a metamorphosis. We were kind of talking about this during the commercial shoot.
Yeah.
Of like that arc of like where's natural hair to now comes a whole new movement of natural hair, and I'm gonna really label it in the reference of hip hop. The one key figure that I think changed the arc of what natural hair meant most was Lil Wayne, because pre Lil Wayne to me, and I'm just speaking from a cultural lens,
Mhm.
and I'm of hip hop.
Right.
People would see a person with locks and think to themselves, okay, that brother's conscious. That sister's conscious. As you say, it's
Right.
a political statement.
Exactly.
Lil Wayne comes and it's like, okay, I don't I don't necessarily think this is a
We don't
political
quite
statement.
understand what's going on here.
I believe that this is a fashion, an aesthetic. It's it's a choice for fashionable
Hmm.
statement. As that's happening, obviously more people are, it's more known, it's more seen, people are pursuing it. What's happening in the industry as that's happening, which I'm thinking that may be like the mid, like early O's or Ox, as they say, like '05, '06, '07. Like what's the arc and how's the shop moving around that time around this?
So by 2005, I had moved out of. So I did create a timeline for myself,
Mhm.
and I said that once my son turned 10, then I would expand the business
Mhm.
and move out of my home.
And first off, let's applaud that, because any person being in business, really being in business for a day is difficult. Then when you take that day to a week, amazing. Week to a month, amazing. Year, 5 years, 10 years. So for people like me that grew up with a dad as a CPA and a granddad as like an all-around business person, rest in peace, Don Scott. I look at a successful business not by how much money you have, but how long you've been in business.
Yeah.
And I'm serious when I say that. So that person, the guy, it's a guy up on the corner that always sells like snowblowers in the wintertime and lawnmowers in the summertime.
Right.
But they've been there for 20 years.
Right.
That's a successful business.
Yeah.
So I just want to point that out.
You're right.
So let's applaud that alone. And you knew benchmarks and where to go.
Yes.
So now we can, get into the expansion of the business, and in that arc as the culture changes too.
Right. So when my son turned 10, it could have been 2000, around 2003
Okay.
or so is when I
Mhm.
began to seek business outside of my home, because I just wanted my home to be my home.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to create that separation barrier for myself. I didn't want all that energy and stuff in my home, and I wanted to diversify my market, because I really wasn't seeing many men, because it was my home.
Interesting. Yeah, and I could see that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And so so I just want to expand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was when I began to look for another space to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the space in Midtown that used to be a food co-op on the corner of Cass and Willis. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very large space, and I knew that I could not be I couldn't financially deal with this, deal with the space by myself.
Mhm.
So I thought to pull in some other women business owners that, that could share, not only just share the rent of the space, but we could network
Mhm.
and kind of support each other's
Yeah.
businesses.
In time and resources and everything.
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it. Marketing, all of that. And so that's when I approached a good friend of mine. Her name was Sharon Pryor, and she had a um, a boutique gift shop called Talani Rose. And she shared her space with her mother, Dale Pryor, who was a gallerist.
Mhm.
And so I had a conversation with her about the idea of sharing a space. And so we went down that road, that investigative road, and she brought in her mother, and then her mother brought in Source Booksellers, Janet Jones.
Mhm.
And so the four of us created a woman-owned space where there were four different businesses that supported each other, and we called it the Spiral Collective.
Okay. Okay.
And so that's what we did.
Wow.
We just separated the spaces and we create our own energy in our own little space. And so that was me moving out of my home and being more accessible to the public.
So in this iteration, like I say, on the past and now, like men and things are changing even in the culture of
Hmm.
how people view natural hair and locks and
Hmm.
that movement. How does that impact like who your clientele is and their consciousness? Because it's no longer as much of a political statement. It could be a fashion statement.
Yeah,
How does that even impact who your clientele is,
yeah.
what the journey is, what the expectation is, how does it impact the business?
So my even though things were transitioning and moving and shifting, I never shifted my intention.
Hmm.
I never shifted the mission of my business model,
Mm.
which was beauty begins from the inside out. I never shifted that, and I still haven't.
Mhm.
And so because I never shifted that, I attracted women and men who were still interested in those kind of conversations
Mhm.
with their hair, with their spiritual body, their physical body, what they're eating. That those conversations just never changed. So that's what happened. It just expanded. I was just able to be accessible to more people that were committed to those kind of conversations. And then I began to hire other stylists.
Mm. So now we get into a whole nother arc of business.
Yeah.
What was that like? How was being as they say the boss? It really
Hmm.
for people that grow business to have people that work that you the boss. It's like such a patriarchal Western um ideology of being a boss and all of this
Hmm.
stuff.
And
When
it's
in
very
reality,
very egotistical as well.
it's nothing like that. You know what I'm saying? For especially most small businesses, you're almost find yourself working more for the people that work for you
100%.
than them working for you, because
Hmm.
it's nuances of things you have to think for. How was that experience? What was that journey like for you?
I'm glad you said that because I never categorized myself as the boss, and I know many people who want to put that label on me as the boss, and I would just say adamantly, I am not the boss.
uh,
Maybe I'm the bill payer, but I am not
hmm
the boss. And I also never want to take on that title for all the reasons that you just said. You know what I mean? I just never want to buy into this egotistical, there's some hierarchy where I am over somebody.
hmm
Because I never see myself as that. And that's not the business culture that I wanted to cultivate.
hmm
I want to cultivate a culture of teamwork,
hmm
a culture of communalism, right?
mm
A culture of us of people that come together sharing the same intention and working together. So I sought out stylists that were on that page. At the time I
Okay.
only had maybe two other stylists.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right. So Now it's the business is flowing, it's
Hmm.
growing. You're seeing things come to life, and it's still in that same arc. But also, I'm guessing the bandwidth of understanding that the other stylists have their own mission and purpose, and now it's like, how do you even align around that? And that's something that most organizations always, I
Hmm.
don't want to say wrestle with. I just want to say it's just gonna be ever present. The hence the whole concept of, if you go to any business school, mission statement, vision statement, and purpose statement.
Right.
It builds the culture of an organization. And as more people join an organization, I don't want to say it changes the culture. It it expands what the culture is, because this person's interpretation of what those values are different, but we can still be aligned towards the same goal. They're just going to see it differently because they got different backgrounds, they got different ideologies, their beat is different. um
Hmm.
what are some of the things that in that space of working with other stylists, that it's like, okay, this is cool? What are some of the things you picked up that you learned? Because that's the other thing, you always learn more when you're around more energy.
Right. Well, so at the time, um, I made sure, see, this is where the interview process comes in, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
where the filtering process comes in. You want to make sure that people are a right fit
Mm-hmm.
for the intention that you have established for for your business.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was very careful to bring on other young ladies that were in alignment with the intention and the culture of the business at the time, right? I only had two other stylists there. And actually, at one point, I only had one stylist for quite some time. Shout out to Natural Hunter, I love you. So I wanted to make sure, so the people that were around me we were all on the same page.
Hmm. That's
We're
deep.
all on the same page.
That's deep. And I also want, I'm not speaking for you, but I do want to add this caveat, because when people say that, sometimes just due to society and communications, people think that, oh, if I'm not the right fit, am I a wrong person? No, sometimes a person's
No.
amazing. It's just that
The
I don't know. It's
intentions
just
aren't in
like
line. Their
it.
intentions don't line up. That's
Yeah,
all.
yeah, yeah.
It's
But it,
nothing wrong. The
yeah,
intentions just don't, it's nothing personal, by the
yeah.
way. The intentions just don't line up. And that's
Mhm.
perfect.
Yeah.
You want to be somewhere where you all on the same page.
Yeah, like here go a great example for everybody. You guys have been on a date with somebody where it's like they're cool, you like talking to them, but it's like, mm, we just don't fit. You know what I'm saying?
That's a good analogy.
But we still cool. I still,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? We can still hang out, but
Yeah.
we just won't pursue anything romantically or
That's
anything.
right.
Just it just
That's
don't
right.
fit.
That's a great analogy. It really is.
So as we get closer to a close, I definitely want to say this. Thank you so much for accepting this interview, one, and being the first award recipient of the My Natural Hair Show, because we definitely wanted to honor you. And when I say we, Detroit is different. The family and the team putting this together. When I think natural hair in Detroit, you're such a the brand textures, to the point where like you've become an adjective. You know what I'm saying? It's like a polo shirt was a brand. It's like that's the brand. Textures. You was at Textures. She connected to Textures. Well, I'm pretty sure it's people that call you Textures, and it's like technically the rest of the name. So thank you so much for that. And this honor is like something that I see so much more because what you represent in this. And it touched me for you to humbly accept. And then also,
I thought you were joking, to be honest with you. Honestly, I just said, who is this? What is he talking about? What's going on here? I never even thought I'm just doing I'm just going along, I'm just doing what I do without a second thought. I never thought about honoring or anything. Is this is just what I do. By the way, I don't want to cut you off. I'm so sorry, but I just want to get in. I shout out Natural Hunter because she was the very first, young lady that I took under my wings, kind of like a daughter. That does not exclude any of the other young ladies that have worked with me in textures. Not at all. I love all of them. I just shout out Natural because she was the very first.
Always community. You see that? Always community. And that's why. And Detroit is different about community and culture. And it was always like, okay, we're going to get there. And it's going to be so many other people as we continue to grow the My Natural Hair Show. And another one of my big homies, and we're going to interview him after, is everything David Humphrey's done with Hair Wars. Like, I love Hump and what's that's grown and how he's grown that culture, community in Detroit. It's just from a different lens.
Yeah.
And I think that...
He's iconic, okay? Period. He's iconic.
Yes. And I just think natural hair, especially in a city like Detroit, with all these black folks, wanted to have a stage for something. This is the third iteration of us doing it, and I wanted to grow, and honoring you is just going to be a big part of that. So thank you so much for accepting the honor, being a part of that, and highlighting this. This is going to be a fun night.
So humble.
And I did get the game.
I'm tickled, too.
I did get the game from Nefertiti. She did say, look, next time you're going to have something like this, we need to expand it. So it's going to be some, look, as we grow this, it's going to be more inclusive. Yeah. We're going to make it, I guess I don't want to say bigger, but it's going to be, there are going to be some more things added to this that's going to add to the experience as we continue to grow this. And we want this event, like a lot of things we're doing with Detroit is Different, to really highlight and embrace Black culture, because I feel that if we're not going to place Black culture on a stage, then who is? Hence, if you guys are following this whole thing, like a collard green cook-off.
Oh God, that was the bomb. That
know,
idea,
it's like,
I could go from city to city.
A natural hair show, and all the people in my neighborhood, like, we gonna do something with bingo. We gonna do something with bingo. We want to do things around things that exist in our community that we're gonna be the only ones to highlight. And no offense to the black bar doing a St. Patrick's Day night, but I'm not checking for that. I'm checking for our stuff. And if we're not honoring our heroes, our sheroes and our champions, then who is? And you are definitely that. And even in this interview, you've given so much more game connected to other things, and y'all gonna see that I'm adding a new big homie to my big homie, my league of big homies.
I appreciate you. I appreciate your intention, your efforts, and you let me, when anything you need, you just give me a call. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you.
All right. So classic last questions. The Detroit is Different 3. And this one I know is going to be a good one. Very first car, year, make, and model, year you got it.
The very first car was in Detroit, 1987, a maroon, I want to say it was a Cutlass.
Wow, a Cuddy. Ain't that something?
Yeah.
Where's the first place you went when you got it?
To church at the shrine of Black Madonna.
Okay. It was like, you was carpooling day one.
I was.
You was like, I got a new car. Hey, well then,
come on, y'all, pile in.
You have become chauffeur.
Seriously. Literally.
Okay, you are the DJ at the end of the fireworks at Woodward and Jefferson. You get to play 3 songs. What songs you playing?
Golden Lady by Stevie Wonder. Strange Fruit by Cassandra Wilson. Oh, the third one. something about a Gap Band, but I can't think of.
Okay.
Think of the name. Can't think
So
of the name of the song.
okay, so we got
Oh no! Oh no! 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 Strike the Gap Band! Strike the Gap Band! Um, um, John Coltrane.
hmm,
Oh God! I drew a blank. Anything by John Coltrane. I'll put it that way.
we gonna play something from A Love Supreme, and I'm sure
That's
that's
it
your
right there.
dad. That's your dad's record collection. Like, hey, you better say some jazz.
Love Supreme by John Coltrane. At my father's funeral, instead of having a singer, we played John Coltrane and Sarah Vaughan.
Wow.
So I have to honor him in that way.
Wow, that's deep.
Hmm
That's deep. That's deep. Did he make you learn an instrument?
I did. I learned. Well, I was. They wanted me to play piano, so I did lessons with that, and
Mhm.
then I did the flute.
Okay. Okay. Did you like it?
Did not.
Okay.
Because I always wanted to learn how to play the harp,
hmm.
but it was very expensive. You know.
So it's been put into the energy in the air. We're gonna see Nefertiti playing harp.
That's right.
We gonna see it because it's a great harpist around here.
Yes.
You know,
Another one.
now you're gonna need some them harps is like 95 pounds.
This is and about $95,000. So.
We gonna get there. We
Mhm.
gonna get there. Last question.
Mhm.
So usually it's for the Detroiters. It's like if you could rename Woodward after one Detroiter, who would it be? For the visitors, it's and this is a strange question for folks. All right. Family reunion comes into town. You don't even know them. It's just a bunch of black folks.
Okay.
And they like, hey, we want to go to the most Detroit place we can go to. Where do you take them?
Belle Isle.
The number one answer.
Period.
Always.
Hands down, Belle Isle. You can't even say Belle Isle. You got to say it like that. The words have to run in. They had to run together. Belle Isle.
The number one answer. Thank you
The
so
truth.
much. Thank you so much, Neff. And definitely come out, join us for the My Natural Hair Show. But always support Textures. And you do so much more than just, like you say, it's like the hair is just
I do.
only a piece of it. So
Yeah.
share a little bit more of what you're doing, how they connect, and get to it.
You're a great interviewer. You're right, because now I am officially creating my own hair product.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already been manufactured, and now I'm looking to market it. By the way, I just need someone to help. I need a marketer, so that's what I'm looking for.
Okay,
Also,
so basically that means that we gonna do some stuff.
yeah, yeah. So that, and I've also leaned into doing more spiritual work. In the mid 2000s, I opened up another business,
Hmm.
and it was called Tarot and Tea, and it was in West Village, and it was a business that offered spiritual counsel in an environment where people can drink tea and read books and all of that. I got gentrified out, and I built a space. I bought the lot next to my home, and I built a small space that I'm calling my tea room sanctuary. And so that's where I am seeing clientele that are seeking spiritual counsel.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
something I've been doing myself very quietly for a very, very long time.
Okay.
So now I'm just publicly talking about it more, and
Okay.
making myself again more available to people that want to have those kind of conversations.
So I do. It's like with that, I gotta ask that follow up just for people because I know people get misunderstandings. Another one of my big homies, rest in peace, especially during everything with COVID. Queen Mother Oshindaru Nefertiti L, one of my most beautiful big homies ever.
Mhm.
But her work in that. And I think people often get this confused because of the arc of how people can look at like, oh, that's that voodoo stuff, or that's the da 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 da.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more about what that process is, and more so the holistic love that's shared in that, so that people don't get it confused and think to themselves, it's
Yeah.
like, nobody's gonna be sacrificing a goat in front
Oh
of you or
my
nothing crazy,
God.
but because people got
Well,
weird
it's what we've
ideologies.
been fed. We've been
Yes.
fed. That's a whole nother conversation, but we have
Mhm.
been fed to to um to not embrace who we are spiritually
Mhm.
as African American people. But here's my process. I'm a light worker. I'm a spiritual medium. Okay. And so I create a space for individuals that are going to see console. I create a space where I can see what's going on with the auric body. I create a space where I invite um, maybe a person's spirit guides or someone in their family who has passed over to give a message,
Mhm.
a sign, um, and show me where the imbalance is so that we come up with a solution for balance. I tell people this all the time, I don't do theatrics. I'm not giving you the number, okay? And I am not predicting someone's future.
Mhm.
I am just creating a space from from imbalance to balance. In other words, my console are solution based,
Mm.
and I invite spirit to come in to show me a vision, a name or incident or something that assist in the conversation. I also um, are now scanning the body temple to identify where there could be an issue that needs attention before it becomes larger than what it already is.
Yes. And holistically, I'm going to say it s- in another practical way for people to
Hmm.
kind of identify. Um, and you're speaking in the realms of consciousness because we, as living beings, we have different realms of consciousness.
Right.
And it's similar to our physical body. Things atrophy as you don't exercise them, but they sometimes do point through. So, for me and many other people,
Hmm.
you'll have when we have what's that? When we have deja vu,
Yes.
we're thinking to ourselves that, oh, this is deja vu, but that was a message coming through in a different realm of a higher consciousness.
Right.
Or sometimes you'll just walk in a room and it's like, the energy feels off. You
Yeah.
don't know why, but that's energy coming through sometimes. And
Yes.
certain people are more have more are empaths. They're more empathetic to those energies around them. Hence, you're centered and you're
Hmm.
exercising that so you can.
Yes.
And that's a lot of holy spiritual work that does exist even in the realm of, like, as Christian as you are, even in Christianity, it exists in many forms, but it's truly purely more centered in our true culture of African centeredness
No doubt.
in Africa. But all cultures have this. It's just more so, are you
Absolutely.
exercising this or not? And depending upon, if we're living such in a different consciousness of what's hitting us through reality, let alone this device here can take away all our consciousness. You're not even getting the message of, like, you know what I'm saying, your grandma saying, hey,
Yes.
check on your mama, check on my daughter. You know what I'm saying? They saying they all right, but they ain't all right. But they're coming through, but they can't get through. And it's like, okay, everything seems kind of off. Then you check in,
Hmm.
get that reading. It's like, okay, one second. Mom says she cool, but in reality, she really ain't
Those are
cool.
the
So
things we
let me
talk
go over
about.
there and sit with
Right.
mom,
That's right.
because mom gonna always say she cool. but she ain't cool.
Those are some of the exact things we talk about.
And I just wanted
Everything
to break it
lends
down.
itself to healing.
Mhm.
Period. That's just it for me. That's
Yeah.
that's what it is, and I just utilize these particular things that I've been born with, right? These attributes or whatever I've been born with. Sometimes it can be a little bit daunting.
But you've
Um,
exercised them, and you even know how
yes,
to.
it's very true.
But what's funny to me in this interview, just bringing it back, as they
Mhm.
say, full circle, because right now it may seem a little bit more esoteric
Mhm.
or you know whatever to certain people, free thinking, as
Yeah.
strange as that term could be, certain
Right.
people. That's what it was when in '93 when you started with textures.
That is the thread.
So now it's like, okay, we can just the metamorphosis comes here, and
Mhm.
you're still, as I would say, leading our people to something that we may not quote unquote think we ready for,
Right.
but it's beyond time for us to reconnect with who we truly are.
Absolutely correct. Which is why I don't really talk about this part of myself that much. But
Mhm.
but now I've been told I've been told you gotta help. It's time.
Because that means that basically the spirits are telling her, hey,
Do your job.
hey.
Do your work.
In '93, it was like, hey, get these people on some natural hair. And
Mhm.
now it's like, hey, let them know.
Mhm.
So when you connect, don't think, don't get caught up in
Mhm.
other consciousness because, especially now, yeah, it's things that break through. And that's all. I just wanted
Mhm.
to give that Kari
Thank you.
marketing context so people aren't
appreciate
walking
it.
away from here thinking to themselves like, oh, so what? No,
Yeah,
it's not that.
it's not that. We can have a whole nother conversation about that.
Oh, we
That's a
definitely
whole
gonna do
nother.
that.
That's
We
a whole
definitely
nother.
we will.
Yeah.
We will. I want to do a session first, but yeah, we definitely will.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this time.
All right. Peace.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.